Hey, all you people out there in internet land, my name is Britt Kulick. I use they, she pronouns. I'm a professional stage manager, and here's part 2 of what it was like to stage manage in the pandemic. So I graduated in May of 2021, and I did not start working professionally until January of 2022. That's a story for a different day. We were still starting to get out of things. We were starting to get back into the flow of things. Everyone was required to be masked in rehearsal. The company had a policy that if you were vaccinated, you were fine, but if you were unvaccinated, you had to get a COVID test every week. Rehearsals were pretty much the same procedure that I had in college. I was in ASM on A Wrinkle in Time from like January through March. I would go in, I would disinfect our table, our chairs, I'd disinfect chairs and tables that the actors were using. I would wipe down everything that was sort of like the communal space just to make sure everything was clean. And we were masked. Air purifier was on. The studio we were in was super small, so there was no moving back and forth anywhere, but it was a bit surreal. And it was interesting because I was meeting people who had worked and acted for this company for years. The company was 20 plus years before the pandemic, and just hearing about what used to be and what has to be now. So it was very interesting. And it was very interesting to think, like, as a young professional in theater, I'm like, is this what my life's going to be like from now until the end of my career? Tech is where things got a little bit looser in a sense. People weren't masked on stage. Theater we were in was cool. They basically had like big 2x4s with a bunch of nails on each side, and they were to hang costumes for changes. But underneath we put masking tape with people's names on each side, and they had a disposable mask on each side of the stage, so that whenever they were off stage, especially for long periods of time, if it was like a quick little run off and run back on, that was fine, but they were to be masked. They were to be masked in the dressing rooms unless they were putting on makeup. It was a little bit more loose with costuming as well, because my witches' costumes weren't necessarily something that you could just throw in the washer, so we're just spraying them down. With the special vodka water mixture, we're washing like the kids' clothes and anything else that could be washed. This was my first experience doing a show that ran more than one weekend. Traditionally, the company would you'd do tech week, preview Friday, show Saturday, show Sunday, and then 1 or 2 student matinees that week, show Friday, 1 or 2 shows Saturday, and then 1 show Sunday. It was very bare bones. We did no student matinees. I don't even think we did a 2-show Saturday. I think we only ever did 1 show on that Saturday. But it was very successful. Nobody got sick. The show went off. I was backstage, masked in a headset, and then having to leave to go do scenic changes with the mask on, all of that sort of thing. And we just acted like it was normal. I do remember my Mrs. Witch one time found my SM&I, and she just said, "Hey, could you take off your mask for a second?" And we all sort of did. And she goes, "I just want you to know my face. I want to know your face. I liked working with you both. I want to work with you both again. And if you ever see me out, please come say hi. And I want to know who you guys are." Because up until that point, we had seen her without a mask, but she hadn't seen us. During the show as well, I was wiping down props that I could. Some things weren't able to be wiped down. I was wiping down set pieces as well. I was with that company from January 2022 through March of 2023. So I basically spent the whole time of the pandemic that we could do theater with them. It was very interesting to see that shift. I did Arsenic and Old Lace with them next. I was the stage manager. Same concept. I had much less to do involving the disinfecting because I was the stage manager. I was dealing with other things. My ASM primarily handled all of that. I was still calling in a mask, and any time we were in rehearsal, we were masked. I think the only time we weren't masked in the rehearsal process for those first 2 shows was during the designer run, and even then, I think we might have been masked for that. You had to go outside if you wanted to be take your mask off. So if like we were on break, a lot of people would go outside to like eat and be unmasked and chat. And I think in Arsenic as well, there was some kissing. There's some kissing between Mortimer and Elaine. We had hand placeholders and did not do any real kissing, I think, till right before the designer run, which was about a week before the show started. We tried to keep contact like that down to a minimum. I'm going to gloss over the summer because I was an assistant technical director at a summer stock theater and very different shops, the ATD and the SM. Another video, another time. But the next show, same procedure. We were masked through auditions, we were masked through rehearsals. Everything was looking pretty good. We started to go to the approach of, after the designer run, we would start unmasking for that week of rehearsal leading into tech. That was sort of I would say, one of the downfalls, because I did have 2 actors test positive right before we went into tech. This is the part that sucks being a stage manager, because I had no control over how they proceeded, because the company had its own policies that everyone agreed to when we signed our contracts. So unfortunately, both of them were paid in full, but were not going to be continuing with the project. We had to do 2 immediate replacements like the day before we teched, which was absolutely insane to have to bring 2 new people into a production like that. The tech was rough as well for reasons unrelated to the pandemic. And I think what that show really did above all else was make us more cautious for the second show that season. I was even more diligent with the mask wearing and the wiping things down and the keeping people distant, which we were into 2023 at that point, and it felt sort of crazy that it was going on 3 years and we still weren't out of it. The second show I did also involved a lot of heavy makeup, so there were times in space that everyone had to be unmasked because we were doing basically like a test run of the makeup. And that was a show as well that, unlike the 3 previous, they couldn't run off into the wings and put a mask on because it was gonna smudge all the makeup. And I think if we hadn't just had what had happened with the previous show, I think I would have been cool. We're moving in a better direction, but it caused me a lot of anxiety and just I don't want to have to go through what I just went through again. That tech process was also rough for reasons unrelated to the pandemic. And then what sort of became really crazy was, at the start of the season, we dealt with having to lose 2 actors to, at the end of the season, I'm doing a 4-person show with no understudies. And I want to say 2 weeks into that rehearsal process, we stopped wearing masks. We had gotten permission, I want to say, to stop wearing them for somebody was coming in to do photos. We were doing photos to promote the show, and my director says, can they stay without masks? And I asked, and they said, if everyone's comfortable, sure. And I was sort of flabbergasted, given everything that I had been through that season. But we basically went maskless, and it was fine. And at this point, March, April, May of 2023, the world was opening back up. I was going out with my actors after rehearsals, we were doing things. It was sort of a complete 180 from the year previous, and even a complete 180 from 6 months before that, which I think showed just kind of, it's like falling asleep. It happened very slowly, and then just all at once we stopped. It's very interesting to have lived through that and to have that be my earliest memories of my career. I feel very fortunate that I got to stage manage both in college and so soon after graduating professionally, because I know a lot of people in my situation, especially those who graduated in 2020, really didn't have work for a full year and a half. I was fortunate the pandemic hit at a time where I was still doing college work, and then that first 6 months after I graduated, we were still trying to figure it out. At the end of the day, I am grateful for all of the experiences I got, regardless of how easy they were, regardless of how tedious it was to have to disinfect everything and keep track of a timer to move rooms. It's a part of my learning, it's a part of my foundation. I hope never to have to use some of these things again, but I am grateful nonetheless. Because I think if I'm not grateful for them, I will have resentment for all that I've missed out on. So I try to just be grateful for what I was able to do and the people that I was able to meet while doing it. So until next time, Drink water, give grace, and I will see you in the next video.